10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2,
Manchester
1,
United have
0.
reached the promised land.
Good morning, everybody. I'm pretty sure my internet's all right today. Not guaranteed. Something might go wrong. Let's hope it doesn't. But we're here to talk about Erik Ten Hag. I mean, I haven't mentioned Erik Ten Hag, have I, for the last 3 constant weeks? It's not my fault Manchester United's process is drawn out. I'm just bringing you the news and updates when they happen. And we're speaking about, I would say, quite an important update from Andy Mitten, who doesn't really, he doesn't really speak too often about the subject, but when he does speak, you listen. So I'm going to run through the updates from Andy Mitten on Erik Ten Hag and Mauricio Pochettino on Ralf Rangnick's role. And I'll be honest, I'm starting to get pretty pissed off about the Ralf Rangnick position, what that role is, or Manchester United aren't doing with him. So I'll speak with you about that a little bit later in the video. But the first thing we're going to focus on is Erik Ten Hag and that update from Andy Mitten. Who's down in the comments? Anuj, I can see you there. T, Nick, I can see you there. Al, Jason, Rego, Josh, Yash. Plenty of you down there in the comments. How are you all doing? Look, I'm sure you're all starting to get a bit frustrated. I'm frustrated. We're all frustrated. Manchester United has taken their time. You know, so many people wanted them to do a proper process on this. And, well, they definitely are doing a proper process on this. That's one thing that you can call it. Let's dive straight into the news. Let's waste absolutely no time. And I'll tell you what, look, it's nice that the internet's working. Don't tempt it, Sam. Don't tempt it, Sam. United forever. Look at that. I see you down there. Somebody joining in the gang straight away. Let me know where you're watching from, buddy. I'll try and give you a shout out throughout the entire stream. And Josh, I didn't forget you. All right. I kept you for a special shout out. Big up to Josh. Josh, who always, by the way, writes the timestamps for the videos. So big up to Josh. Let's get the show on the road. Witterbird, nice to see you down there in the comments as well. So this is the update that we're going to run through. This is the main update that we're going to run through from yesterday from Andy Mitten. As I said, Andy Mitten, editor of United We Stand, United's longest running fanzine, I think, over 30 years. Very established, very respected, very informed man. So when Andy Mitten has to speak about the subject, you listen. So let's run through what he had to say on the topic. The headline is what we already know. The managerial race is down to Ten Hag and Poch. We knew that already, okay? Manchester United are at an advanced stage in their search for a new manager, with the final decision come between Ten Hag and Poch. We scroll down here. We don't need to know that bit there. This is where the story, I suppose, we can speak about. United's football director, John Murtough, and technical director, Darren Fletcher, have had several rounds of meetings, yeah, they have, which began 6 weeks ago, following a period of detailed research and consultation on United's side, which included the views of several former United players, which is the first point I want to speak about there. United forever, you're watching from the west of England. How you doing, buddy? Nice to have you on the channel and as part of the family. Mizo, you're saying, I'm tired of these conversations. Just pay the ticket. It's not as simple as that, Mizo. You know it's never as simple as that. Players worth X amount. Oh, you just go and pay it. And it's not simple. Manchester United are very good at making things not simple. And that's exactly what we're doing there. But that point there that I wanted to speak about, because I tweeted this yesterday morning. I said that, you know, if you look at Manchester United's former players and how vocal they are in their support of Pochettino, you know, from Rooney, Nicky Butt, who was with the club for like 8-9 years. So he would probably know, right, more so than most, what is needed behind the scenes and what the club doesn't have behind the scenes. That's something worth considering. You got Gary Neville, Paul Scholes. Who else you got? Keane, Rio, Sheringham. All of them supporting Poch. So it's the idea there that, as Andy Mitten has said down here, if Manchester United have been consulting lots of their former players on who that new manager should be, then we all know what that conversation would have been. We all know that conversation would have been them recommending Pochettino. And as I said in this tweet there, I find it very strange how there is like a big divide, like a big polar opposite opinions between what the players want, former players want, and what fans want. Don't know why that is, but Darren Fletcher certainly is heavily involved in this process. This process basically has been down to John Murtough and Darren Fletcher. That's exactly what you would expect of John Murtough. He's our new, I don't know what his actual position is called. Is it director of football? I think it's director of football. He was brought in, internal appointment from the club, to bring some sort of clarity and overall vision and control from a footballing side in footballing decisions. So John Murtough should be at the top of this tree. That is fine. You know, whether or not John Murtough is good enough to do that role, that's a different debate and argument. But John Murtough should be leading it. Darren Fletcher, however, find it odd. Find his position at Manchester. I found it odd since the start. He's down as a technical director, but he's there getting booked on the sidelines for Atletico Madrid. It's like Darren Fletcher wants to be involved in everything or is being allowed to be involved in everything. If he's a technical director, he should just sit back and just focus just on that. Almost feels like he's just got his finger in all the pies. But it seems like Manchester United have been at least consulting former players. And I'll be honest, I would say that's part of the reason why there's a big lack of indecision, a big lack of decision making at Manchester United. Because if you've got all these former players saying that they want Pochettino, and on the other hand, you've got Ralf Rangnick who's saying he wants Erik Ten Hag, you've got a massive contrast of opinion there. And it almost feels like there's too many cooks spoil the broth, is a cliche that really applies to what Manchester United have done throughout this whole process with the decision making on Ten Hag or Poch. It's like everybody's allowed to present their evidence. And it's like, oh, what about this? Oh, what about that? Oh, what about this? And it's just left it in this constant 50-50. Absolute 50-50. Let's go down and read a bit more about what Andy Mitten's had to say. After years of underachieving, United are determined to employ a manager who can make the club successful again. In the meetings with managers of their representatives, which followed, United discussed in detail the intentions and ideas of the candidates. Murtough and Fletcher know the importance of the appointment and wanted to give as much clarity as possible. When interviewing for the position of United's manager, the meetings with candidates lasted up to 2.5 hours. A long time. Now, this is quite an important thing here. Richard Arnold, as we said, we're going to be led by Murtough and Fletcher, which we already know, and has now become involved in discussions and meetings around the two candidates. So at this point, that takes it up a notch. We were on level 3 before, we're on level 4 now, if you want to call it that. Because I'm pretty certain that it won't reach the letterbox of Joel Glazer until he has to just simply tick a box. Poch or Ten Hag. Or, in fact, and it's not that at all. It's just that he'll be told a decision saying, this is who it's going to be, yes or no. I don't think it's reached Joel Glazer yet, and that's the final stage, I suppose. But Richard Arnold being involved, that's an important level. Now, you could say at that time, Sam, why is Richard Arnold involved at all? If he's delegating. At this point, he's delegating to John Murtough and Darren Fletcher. It doesn't mean he won't be involved in the process at all. Lou here's in the comments, you're saying it's very clear we lack direction. Jeez, man. Yeah, we're a car that's like just constantly going around and roundabout. Process is like watching a dripping tap. I wouldn't ever recommend watching a dripping tap. That's boring. Ricky, you're saying we can only assume at this stage who you item are actually... I don't know what you're saying there. I can talk all day about my favourite, but they won't listen. I doubt they are taking too much note of ex-players. I don't think they're going to be taking a huge amount of consideration into ex-players. But given that every single ex-player is saying the same thing, I think there's some power in that. Of course it is. If Rooney, Sheringham, Butt, Neville, Rio, Scholes, Keane are all saying Poch. It's not as if one of them saying Ten Hag, they're all saying Poch. Then, of course, that is something that is actually getting listened to. I think it'd be foolish to think it wasn't. United fans, we know that. United fans favour Ten Hag. There's a little snippet there on Steve McClaren saying former England manager and United assistant manager Steve McClaren, who had Ten Hag as his assistant at FC Twente, gave United a glowing assessment of him and said he had the attributes to succeed. And I suppose this is the big sentence, which I suppose scares all of us, provided he gets the right support network around him. Will he get that at Manchester United? Well, let's be honest. History tells us no, he won't. History tells us that Erik Ten Hag will be sort of left out to work it out on his own, and that the board won't really work with him and will more than likely work against him. Hopefully that changes, but I suppose we can just see there. Now, Steve McClaren. We've got to have a conversation about Steve McClaren. I didn't particularly think we would be having this conversation, but just as the same time, I think it was about an hour or so before that comment came out from Andy Mitten, Jamie Jackson of The Guardian said this: Steve McClaren could be Manchester United's number 2 if Erik Ten Hag is appointed. What do you think about that? Because we've been talking about Dutch coaches who have a United bond. And we've spoken about Rennie Meulenstein. We've spoken about Jaap Stam, Ruud van Nistelrooy, Ron Van Persie. No one really mentioned Steve McClaren. But is that going to be a manager for you who's just going to be a Mike Phelan V2? Or, given their working relationship that they've had together in FC20, it's kind of hilarious how the way it works, but now it will be McClaren being Ten Hag's assistant rather than the other way around. I can completely understand the logic behind Steve McClaren. I'm not saying that Steve McClaren would be the right job, the right man to take us forward, but you can completely and utterly understand the logic there. And you'd be foolish for saying anything else, right? Even if McClaren's not the man that you want to bring in. And I can't imagine there's going to be many of you in the comments who are going to be buzzing at the idea of Steve McClaren coming back to Manchester United. But there is logic behind it. Let me go down here and let me see what you're saying in the comments. Has Ralf been shafted? Says Philip. Ralf, sorry, Philip, I'm going to be speaking about Ralf a little bit later in the show. And I think I might actually do a video on Ralf today because I'm getting pretty pissed off. McClaren can speak Dutch. Also, the worst Dutch impression that's ever. Remember when he just when he just moved over and he just started speaking English, but with a little Dutch twang? That would be hilarious. That was hilarious, that video. I think McClaren would be a great number 2, says Stephen. Let's see if you've got many supporters down here in the comments. Mitchell is good. Paul Mitchell isn't assistant manager. Paul Mitchell is a sporting, is like a recruitment genius. He's like a sporting director. That's what his role is at Monaco, as far as I know. That's pretty much the role he had at Leipzig too. Completely different to what McClaren has done and what McClaren would be. John, you say, I mean, it quite literally is United material. He was there during the treble season. He was there during arguably Fergie's most successful years. Steve McClaren has experience at Manchester United, but the question mark would be, is Steve McClaren a relic in the same way that Mike Phelan was a relic? I stood by the fact that I thought Mike Phelan made sense at the beginnings of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. You know, when it was going really well and we were sort of re-establishing certain things, we were like, okay, yeah, I like that. But then as it went on, the years went on, Mike Phelan just was effectively like a Darren Fletcher. Like, you didn't know what he did. You didn't know what value he was bringing to Manchester United. You were like, really? That's kind of the situation. That's where I'm a bit torn between McClaren as whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. I think if Manchester United could get 2 assistant managers, I can see the value of that. I can see the value of Ten Hag with McClaren plus 1. And that one could be someone therefore who is a little bit inexperienced. Someone like Van Persie. But no, I don't know. It's really odd. I personally want it to be Ten Hag's assistant manager from Ajax. Was it Mitchell van der Gaag? Perfect. Because he's going to need someone supporting him who knows his style of play and who can basically be Ten Hag when Ten Hag isn't there. That's what I said Ralf Rangnick needed in his coaches. Did he get it with Chris Arnold? Rangnick didn't get the coaches he wanted at Manchester United. He got the coaches he could get at the time. Chris Arnold was never going to be top of his list. Everyone knows that. Chris, what are you saying in the comments here, my friend? You're saying, I wonder if the reason why those ex-players recommending Poch is because Poch will back English players, e.g. Kane, while Ten Hag may favour European players. It makes no sense otherwise. Well, I wouldn't say it makes no sense because, as I've said plenty of times, mate, Poch is a good manager. Poch comes to United, we're a much better team. Poch comes to United, I think we'll be in a better place in 2-3 years' time than we are right now. That's what my gut instinct is telling me. But I just think Ten Hag will be better. Obviously, those ex-former players disagree. And I do think it's more towards the fact that they've been exposed to Poch. They've seen the good work that Poch has done, and they can see it working logically at Manchester United. I've told you that Gary Neville, he's worked, he had a full week working with Pochettino, so he's got like hands-on experience of working with him. So that kind of makes sense. You understand that, right? The rest of them, I don't know. The rest of them might have. Sheringham, did he work with Poch? I don't know. Don't know whether he did. But it comes down to a matter of opinion at that point. And it's still that matter of opinion which is going around United's board. Geez, what is it now? The 6th of April. I can't remember when the first Ten Hag interview was. I think it was 2 weeks past on Monday. That was when the first thing. I think it might have been the 21st of March. Roughly thereabouts. And we're now on the 6th of April. As I said, I think this appointment has to be done by the 22nd of April. That was the number I created in my head. I was like, that's a month from the first interview with Ten Hag. That's a month before the end of the season. That seems fine. Go down here. Almost 1,000 watching, 40 likes. You really are stingy with the likes, people. Really are I don't get it. I look at other channels and the amount of people that watch compared to the amount of people that like. Maybe people just don't like me. And that's fair enough, because if I didn't like me, I wouldn't like the video. But look, if you could just drop a like on the video, it genuinely helps the channel. Massively, it does help the channel, and it's free to do. Let's go down and read a bit more about what Andy Mitten's saying here. Several former players think the Argentinian would be a better fit, and this is what Nicky Butt said about him. I'd go all out and get Poch as manager. He's proven in the Premier League. He's young and enthusiastic. His style of play would suit United, and his backroom staff seems switched on. I met him a couple of times at Spurs' training ground and had lunch with him. He was someone who you want to play for. Again, so Nicky Butt using the same sort of thing that Gary Neville is doing then. He's got hands-on experience. He's met Poch. He's seen what Poch could do. And I think they're all correct. I think Poch would be a great coach at United. And I'm not going to look, if at the end of this, if at the end of all of this, right, it's Poch, I'm not going to be pissed off. I won't have to do any sort of reversing, because I've never slated Poch in any video, simply because I've supported the idea of Ten Hag more, and I've been pushing the Ten Hag propaganda, hands up, because that's my personal opinion. That's what I would like to happen. But I would not be upset in any way, shape, or form by Poch. I just don't think it won't excite me as much as the idea of Poch coming to United in 2016 instead of Mourinho, or the idea of Poch coming in 2019 after Solskjaer was sacked, where we instead went, of course, for Ralf Rangnick. No, sorry, not for Rangnick. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Those two situations, I would have been far more excited, because I think the timing would have been better for Manchester United than now with Poch. I'm not saying that PSG period has completely stained him. It's put a little semi-dark cloud over his name. But I think, I'll be honest, like, there's so many managers who have failed at PSG. There's so many managers who will continue to fail at PSG. It's not an unmanageable team, but I think if any manager is going to do it, it's going to be Zinedine Zidane. I'm not going to be upset at Poch coming in, but I just don't feel I find it kind of hard to articulate, if I'm being completely honest, especially on live streams, like, why I want Ten Hag so much more than Poch, because there is such an inherent risk of bringing in a manager like Frank de Boer. Won 4 league titles in a row with Ajax, I think, before he went to Crystal Palace. And obviously it didn't work out there for him. I was at Inter Milan he went to first, I think, actually. And it didn't work out for him there either. Of course, there's a chance that it might not work out, but just Ten Hag, he's got a bit of that X factor. That sort of thing that you can't really explain when you walk into a house, but the house has either got an X factor or it doesn't have an X factor. It just strikes me that right now, Ten Hag has that X factor, that bit that you can't really explain, but that bit that just gives you the extra bit of excitement about whether he would come in. Of course, it's a gamble. So is Poch. But I think it would be a calculated gamble and a calculated risk. That's what I think anyway. As I said, it's kind of hard to articulate. We go down here, right? And this is a little bit that we need to definitely speak about. United have got no appetite to go into next season with an interim manager at the risk of writing off another campaign. Current interim boss, Ralf Rangnick, Ralf spelled wrong, has limited say in the matter and has been asked to concentrate on seeing the season out and getting United in as high a league position as possible. The thing that we're seeing and the thing that we're hearing quite a lot about Ralf Rangnick is this, right? This is coming from Jack. I'm not going to try and say that second name. From the Daily Mail. It's coming from the Daily Mail, saying Ralf Rangnick is set to work just 6 days a month when he begins a consultancy role at Manchester United this summer. This would constitute 144 days of work should Rangnick stay until 2024. Now, a lot of us had fears about Ralf Rangnick's role at Manchester United past these 6 months. Okay? All of us did. Because we know how our club operates. We know how our club is run and the people who are at the top, and why that's frustrating for us that someone like Rangnick may well just be ignored. And as I said, I'm doing a separate video on this, right? Because on top of that story, we're seeing this. This is coming from Austria this morning, right? It's an Austrian local newspaper. Scroll down here, and they're saying that basically Ralf Rangnick is being eyed up for the Austrian national team job. and that their sporting director, Peter Schürrle, has flown to Manchester yesterday to speak to Ralf Rangnick about that role. And effectively, if that's correct, and why wouldn't it be, right? Because Manchester United have dithered. Manchester United, this is the thing that's pissing me off about Ralf Rangnick, right? Ralf Rangnick was never going to be an incredible manager for Manchester United. Never, ever. His job when he came in was, of course, to win games and see how good we would do by the end of the season. But the measure of success for Ralf Rangnick when he came in was not silverware. I said that at the very beginning, absolutely stood by it. The reason he came in and accepted a 6-month interim role was because of the excitement of what was coming after it. For him, the 6-month interim role was, if anything, a bit of an inconvenience. It got in the way of what he wanted to do. Because what's the point in bringing in a manager who hasn't managed in 2 years, and therefore is putting him in an unfamiliar role in extreme pressure circumstances at the biggest club, one of the biggest clubs in the world, and then just ignoring him for the consultancy role, which he has got established experience and a proven track record of being very successful at. That would be so Manchester United. It's unbelievable. Ralf Rangnick as the interim manager was never going to be like incredible. We weren't all of a sudden going to go on like a Solskjaer unbeaten streak. Oh my God, look at us. We're playing incredible football. Look how quickly he's got the gegenpressing system in, because his style of play is something that does take time. Ask Jurgen Klopp. It does take time. Thomas Tuchel, it works straight away. It's a little bit different with Tuchel. I don't know. But just because it worked, as I said, don't ever use Chelsea as an example of how things work, because it only works at Chelsea. But I just don't understand the idea that Manchester United really, by the sounds of it, okay, have brought in Ralf Rangnick for that interim role, and then we're just going to ignore him for that consultancy role. It's something that a lot of you had fears about straight away. I had fears about it. I just kept them under the surface. I was trying to be optimistic about, you know what, he's a great, because when Ralf was offered the job at Manchester United first without the consultancy role, do you remember what he did? He rejected the contract offer. When we went back with that 2-year role attached, he accepted it. I wish he had put in some sort of like contractual stipulations, but I suppose United could have just paid it off just like we do. Gary, you're saying Ralph's got a better CV than Fletcher, but yet they still let him make the decisions. Manchester United are simply, by the sounds of it, sort of keeping Ralf on the sidelines and saying, look, you just focus on the football. Kind of using him as a bit of a fool guy. I don't know. Craig saying, Sam, quick question. Can we have a scouting department for managers like they have for searching players? Like the next big manager in the making? I'm sure they do, Craig. But Manchester United don't particularly go for things that smart. And you wouldn't need a scouting department as extensive for players as you would for managers, because the managers are, it's quite obvious to look at managers and see what they're doing by comparison of players anyway. Alvin, you're saying Ralf should leave if he's not been promised his role. That definitely is a potential now, in my opinion. I don't think that can be ruled out. And as I said, it will be pure Manchester United if we let that happen. Absolutely Manchester United. If we, after all of this, after the 6 months of up and down football and sort of painful football and sometimes great football under Ralf Rangnick, to then just push him away in some sort of pointless role and ignore him. As I said, he's got track records of doing a great job at Hoffenheim in terms of building a club up, and at Leipzig as well. And he was going to go and do it at Lokomotiv Moscow, and he's turned his back on that, mate. It's just, I don't know. I think a lot of United fans have got a lot of empathy with Ralf Rangnick because of his honesty. Because we've been fans of United for so long, and we know that the club has just lied to us for so long. And managers, typically they sort of smoke and mirrors as part of the game. Ralph's a bit more old school in that sense. He doesn't have smoke and mirrors. It's all very truthful with him, very straightforward, and it's allowed him to build a relationship with fans. Well, it certainly allowed him to build a relationship with me. Well, you know what I mean. I'm pretty furious about the idea that United have just have just done, I suppose, what most people expected them to do. Disappointing, but not surprised sort of thing. At what point does it change? I don't know. Bebo, what are you saying here? Great website, Bebo. Old school. To be honest, I think the players always blame the managers for everything when things go wrong. Too much player power and ego. They need to go. Oh, mate, you're definitely preaching to the choir with that one. That's absolutely is the case with Manchester United. That player power has taken over. Fergie got out of the game at the right time. Fergie never stood for any player power. Ask Jaap Stam, ask Roy Keane, ask Ruud van Nistelrooy, and ask David Beckham. Always the 4 examples that come to mind. Times when Fergie felt like the player power and the relationship wasn't going right, he just sacked them off. He got rid of them, even if they were some of the best players in the world at the time. And United survived, United recovered, and United moved forward. It was now player power has taken over, as I said, like a parasite, like a virus that's just infested, like a plague in Manchester United that we can't get rid of. And Ralf Rangnick, for me, was a man who genuinely, and this is the thing, right? He had the best intentions in mind for Manchester United as a football club, more so than anybody else we've got anywhere near a decision-making role inside that club. Ralf Rangnick saw what was wrong, and because he wasn't emotionally attached to it whatsoever, he could cut it all out, get rid of what was not needed, and bring in what was needed. And for me, Ralf was the man to really help steer that direction. And if all of a sudden we're now just ignoring that, imagine after all of this, Ralf Rangnick just leaves at the end of this season and Pochettino comes in. You may as well have just ignored the last 6-7 months. You may as well ignore this entire process. Because if after all of this, we just end up with Poch as manager and no Ralf Rangnick in a proper consultancy role, we're just where we could have been had we just brought Poch in without Rangnick in the first place. Like they'd already made their mind up. I don't know. Chris, what you're saying down here, the board wants someone they can control, kiss their feet and barks yes. Otherwise, we would have gotten Conte. This is why Poch is being considered. I'd love to say that that's just complete cynicism, but maybe it's not. Maybe it is part of it. Maybe you're right. And I'll tell you what, I think everybody here's got their fair justification and reasons for thinking like that now. If we go back towards Erik Ten Hag, and we've seen what Fabrizio's saying on the latest with him, he said that Erik Ten Hag is well informed on everything in the club, like the potential budget, like the signings they want to do. He's already thinking about Manchester United. He wants that job, man. He absolutely wants that job. And it's whether or not Manchester United want him. But in the same way as because of what we've done here with Ralf Rangnick, we've sort of messed him about. There still is no clarity over exactly what that role is. All we're seeing is stories like this coming out saying that Ralf Rangnick, this is the first time we've got any sort of hint of what it might be. And he's saying 6 days a month. That's like a freelancer. That's not, I suppose that's technically what a consultant is, right? Somebody who consult on a basis of 6 days a month, you say, right, is this the right thing to do? Is this the wrong thing to do? But if Ralph's potentially going to go there now and all of a sudden become the national team manager at Austria, I think his priorities are going to completely and utterly switch. And you're saying, to be honest, I'd have much preferred that Ralf was brought in as a straight director of football. It would have been a breath of fresh air to have his knowledge at that level. It has been a breath that he's been a breath of fresh air with how he's speaking. So to have that sort of honesty, insight, and intelligence at a board level from a footballing perspective would have been an incredible step forward for Manchester United. We simply don't have that. And you need to always blend experience and in everything, even in management, in board levels, in teams, you need to always blend experience with youth. Because the youth will take you forward in a different sort of mindset, but the experience will make sure you get steered in the right direction. Without one or the other, if you just focus on experience, you kind of get stuck doing the old things that you know work, but because you don't have any young mindsets, you don't really have those things that can take you forward. At board level, that's what Manchester United have for a long time. Because they've all been Glazer stooges, we're stuck in that mindset and that process, listening to ex-players, just looking at what's in front of us rather than what's out there and what could possibly take us forward. It's just frustrating, man. It's absolutely frustrating. Jerry, what are you saying here? Manchester United is like that girlfriend. You know he's going to go and cheat on you, but you keep taking her back again. She must be hot. But yeah, you shouldn't do that. Gary, you're saying we need a manager that tells the players when they're shit and when they're good and let to be managed by the board. Quite a lot of you get excited with the comments and you don't actually read it before you send it in. And then it makes it really hard for me to read out because the English isn't there. So sorry, Gary, I didn't actually understand that question. When will United make this? Let me know in the comments, eh? Genuinely, what's your gut telling you? When do you think there's going to be a decision made by? Type a date in the comments that you genuinely like. Think about it don't just type in a date without thinking about it. When do you reckon we'll actually know by? Because on the one hand, we're hearing stories that Ten Hag and Ajax wouldn't want an appointment being officially announced until the end of the season, which could leave us until the 25th of May? Thereabouts. Or will something be made official a little bit earlier, like being leaked from the journalists in XYZ, rather than getting an official announcement? When do you think we'll have clarity on this decision? Because, as I said, 21st of May was when Erik Ten Hag was interviewed. What was that? 10 days ago? 17, 18 days ago, roughly-ish? Same length of time we had between Atletico Madrid and Leicester. And still we're at the point now where look, talks are more advanced, right? As I said, I'll go back to Andy Mitten's article. I'm not saying that things aren't moving, but things are going at a real snail pace. We go back here and we read this bit here. Where is it? There you go. Andy Mitten saying that Richard Arnold will be guided primarily by Murto and Fletcher from a football perspective and has now become involved in discussions and meetings. So this week was when we are supposed to have the second interview between Ten Hag. I don't think it'll be Ten Hag directly. I think it'll be Ten Hag's representatives with Manchester United, probably meeting down in the London offices. I don't think it'll be in Manchester either. Richard Arnold's involved. That means we're getting closer to that decision. But it almost feels, at this point, it feels like, I don't know, what is it? What's one that drags out? It's like watching the World Cup draw or the Champions League draw. Just come on, finally start drawing the balls. That's what it feels like with Manchester United. Jaden, you don't think anything's going to be announced until after the Eredivisie is ended if it is Ten Hag. Matthew, you think it's probably going to be the end of this month. See down here what you're saying. Carl, you're saying end of the season. Captain, you're saying May 30th or June the 1st. That really is. Chris, you're saying end of the season. PSG don't want it announced, but you mean Ajax. Poch wouldn't want that announced before, out of respect to PSG. Oh, you mean PSG. Arnold likes Ralf Rangnick. In fact, he brought him in, so I'm hoping Arnold backs Ralf Rangnick's inputs. That when Manchester United brought in Ralf Rangnick, it's the first time that I've looked at the decision that Man United have made, and I'm like, wow, you've actually made the right choice. You've actually made, on paper, the smartest choice. Because we were getting linked with a ton of different... Did like Rudy Garcia, I think, from Lyon. I can't remember who else was being linked, but there was a Brendan Rodgers, I think, was being linked. There was a couple of managers who were being linked to saying, let's bring them in now. Zinedine Zidane, of course, was another one. But from an interim basis, I thought that nothing made more sense than Ralf Rangnick until the end of the season and then Ten Hag in the summer. And it still could happen, right? That still could be the case. But Ralf Rangnick feels like he's getting a little bit frozen out at the moment. I wonder if that would have changed if Manchester United were still in the Champions League. If Manchester United were fourth right now with 3 points above Spurs or some sort of shit. I wonder if Manchester United's listening to Ralf Rangnick really has changed because of how we've been playing this season and maybe the lack of success that he's had. It wouldn't surprise me. I think it's completely foolish to think that that is the case, but Manchester United, they just chop and change their minds, and the people who are making the decisions in the club chop and change their minds so often that maybe it's that short term. It's that short-termism coming through again. Let me see what else you're saying down here. I hope Woodward isn't involved. He's not involved at all. Woodward is out of the club at all. At all? He's completely gone. Gary, I think the board are waiting until we get hammered by Liverpool to spin the manager situation in a positive way. Oh, God, I forgot we've got to play Liverpool. 19th of April, right? Play Liverpool on the 19th and Arsenal on the 23rd. I think that's right. So, yeah, I think the season will be rather done by the end of that. Or you never know. We'll win both games and then we're going to... No, absolutely not. Sanjay, you think it's going to be end of the season? John, you're saying this is probably going to be Poch. If we were to go over here and get an update on Poch, as I said, this is definitely still a two-horse race. It's not just Erik Ten Hag. And just the latest we've got is from the Mirror from this morning, saying, like Ten Hag, Pochettino is understood to have can't read. Like Ten Hag, Pochettino is understood to have impressed in his interview with John Murtough and Darren Fletcher, outlining his vision for United, what it will take to rebuild the squad, and his strategy for taking the club back to the top. So I imagine if we're going to have a second interview with Ten Hag and his representatives, I imagine we're going to have a second interview with Pochettino and his representatives, right? Neil Driscoll, you think it's going to be down when Ajax win their league? Currently, Ajax are 4 points ahead of PSV in the Eredivisie with 6 games to go, if I remember correctly. They actually play PSV in 11 days' time as well, I think, in the Dutch Cup final. So that'll be interesting to watch. But yeah, there's every chance that Ten Hag finishes this season with a domestic double and that he walks away from Ajax with 3 domestic doubles and their first Champions League semi-final since '97. Pretty decent record, I would say. Like Ralph says, it will take 3 transfers to be on top. Yeah, I did that video yesterday. I'm sure some of you watch it. Not everyone watch it, obviously. But I did a video yesterday on Ralf Rangnick and his plans moving forward. And the fact that he had that 4-point plan for Manchester United, looking at each and every part of it, and it all just made perfect sense. The logic is there, the intelligence is there, the thinking and the thought process is all there. It's all laid out in front of you in a clear 4-point plan, and it's all correct. So why don't you just listen to him? Why is it that maybe Manchester United are giving more credence to the likes of Sheringham, Butt, Rooney, Neville, rather than the man who has so much experience in building football clubs? As I said, it's a way of looking inwards instead of outwards. It's a very strange thing. I think it's a very strange thing anyway. But look, before we quickly move on, if you would, ladies and gents, there's tons of you watching. So if you would consider, please drop a like on the video and subscribe to United People's TV. I'm not the only one who thinks that Ten Hag is the right man. But I want to have a big shout out here to Bet Victor for supporting United People's TV. A little quick ad break here, a little snippet from Adam McCullough and their latest episode of the Last Man Standing show, because he's been speaking about Ten Hag and Poch. So have a little listen to what Adam McCullough had to say on it.
It seems to be a toss-up between Ten Hag and Pochettino. What way are you sort of swaying?
Look, I'm 50-50 at the moment, and if we got either of those coaches, I'd be delighted, because I think they're both modern-day coaches who could take the team forward. But I do kind of buy that statement, and the reason why I buy that statement is because at Manchester United, you've got owners who aren't particularly geared towards wanting to win all the trophies, or at least make decisions like a big football club should be making decisions. We're geared towards the commercial. We know that. And I feel like Poch's success, especially at Spurs, was done with a board that kind of had one hand tied behind his back. He couldn't really make signings when he wanted to. He couldn't compete with the teams around him in the transfer market necessarily. And look, he will be able to spend money at Man United. That's not what I'm not saying. But he's also had to deal with owners who are mental and, you know, people like Daniel Levy and all that. So I just feel like because of his experiences in the Premier League and with Spurs and our owners being I feel like he is the perfect choice to come into that.
Well, I didn't actually realise that, but Adam seems to disagree. Adam seems to think that Poch's experience there with... And I completely understand the logic, because that is one thing that Poch has over Ten Hag. Poch has worked in difficult environments before by comparison. And Ten Hag has always had that support network at Ajax. He's had his Van der Sar. He's had his Mark Overmars. He's had the people he can lean on. And he's had the owners who basically have the same visions aligned with what he wants to achieve at Ajax. Whereas at Spurs, I mean, Poch had to go an entire summer without signing anybody. And he did well there. Look, I'm gonna leave the link to the video in the comments there. If you can just head over there, I've left a comment about, I think they're trying to, Paul Machin from Redmen TV is trying to argue that Ronaldo's a bigger flop this season than Lukaku, and it's just like, I know you're just trying to goad people, but come on, man. So there's a comment I left there about that. But yeah, I actually didn't realise that he supported Poch. At the end of the day, I don't think any of us are going to be angry if Poch comes in. Truly and honestly, I don't think there's going to be that many United fans who are angry if Poch comes in. There's going to be United fans, of course, who are angry, saying, look, man, he's 1-0. He ultimately failed at PSG by not winning the Champions League. But then so did Tuchel and so did Unai Emery, and neither of them have become bad managers when they left PSG. It's just they weren't able to be successful at PSG. And this question here, was what success was actually at Spurs? I mean, Spurs before Poch went in were a bang average mid-table club. Nothing more. Getting into the top 4 was a bit of a sneak for Spurs. That's what they were. That was their levels. He may not have won a trophy, but Ralf Rangnick is not a man who's built his career successfully on trophies. He's built it on the things he does at the clubs. And what Poch did at Spurs was very special. With the players that he brought in and the players that he brought through and the team that he built a Premier League challenging team with extremely, extremely limited resources by comparison to the rivals around him at the time. And he did so with a board that works again. As I said, he did so when he was basically swimming upstream. So what Poch did there was a massive overachievement at Spurs. Spurs should never have been on the edge of winning the Premier League title. They fell short at the end, but let's be honest, that's not a surprise. It's Spurs. Spurs should never have got to a Champions League final, but they did, and they lost it. And ultimately, okay, not surprised because it's Spurs. This, I would say, is the biggest fear that I think a lot of people have got. Has Poch had his best years? I wouldn't say Poch has had his best. I mean, shit me, he's 2 years younger than Ten Hag. So I don't think we can really use age as part of this situation. I think a really significant part of the whole Poch and Ten Hag situation with United fans is that allure of what you don't know. The grass is greener, and it's part of it, man. Because we don't know, because Ten Hag doesn't really have a failure as such on his CV. You can argue that Champions League semi-final was a failure, but it was Ajax's first Champions League final in 22 years. So it was a massive success getting there. It's a huge disappointment not getting through to the final, given that they were one kick away from it. But it wasn't a failure. And I know people will like to call that a failure, but it wasn't a failure. So Ten Hag doesn't really have that failure on his CV. I don't think that Poch's Premier League or Champions League exploits at Spurs was a failure either. I genuinely don't. For the life of me, I don't. Maybe that season where they lost the league, they could have maintained it better, but I don't know. And Ant is right there. So we're fucking hell. I apologize about. I definitely will apologize for the daily Ten Hag conversations that we have. I'm just trying to bring you updates on what are the most crucial talking points around Manchester United on a daily basis, and there really are changes and chop and change from on a daily basis at Manchester United. So that's why I bring them to you. We're just all a little bit frustrated because we want to sort of park this conversation, draw a line in the sand, say, right, Ten Hag or Poch is our manager. Then boom, let's start planning for next season. Let's start getting excited for what's coming forward. What I'm going to do tomorrow actually is I'm going to do. Lots of you have been asking for it. I've been holding back on it, but I'll do it now. I'm going to do a Ten Hag keep or sell. I'm going to run through the squad and the players that I think that Ten Hag would like to keep and sell. All right, so I'm going to do that tomorrow. What I would say as well is everyone is joined in. Now, make sure you drop a like on the video, subscribe. But also, there won't be a live video tomorrow, Friday, or Monday because I'm going away for a couple of days. Going to go get me a little bit of sunshine. Why not? Trying to get away from all this noise. But yeah, there won't be a live stream tomorrow or Friday. So today's the last live stream of the week, but I'll be back on Tuesday. So no worries about that. It's only going to be a couple of days. Thomas saying, is it just me or is the sound on the live stream cutting? I think it's just you, my friend. Yep, it's just you. But look, Manchester United, it's good to hear that it's advanced. To hear that Richard Arnold is involved in the conversations is a big step forward because this decision won't be made until it goes through Richard Arnold and then it goes up to Joel Glazer. So we're one step away from that now, right? We're one step away from the decision being put at the door of Joel Glazer. I wish it wasn't him making the ultimate decision, but he's the owner of the club and therefore it will be him. I don't personally think that Ten Hag, having no experience in the Premier League, rules him out or makes him any less appealing as a candidate. Tuchel didn't have experience. Klopp didn't have experience. Guardiola didn't have experience. And they've all been successful. That's just the way it works, eh? Until you come to the Premier League, you can't gain experience in the Premier League. I feel it's the pressure that's coming from former players And there's probably the pressure from above and below. I think the pressure above from Manchester United will be going for Poch. I think the pressure from below from ex-players and people who are being consulted is all about Poch. But the people inside there, Ralf Rangnick, who's been brought in for that job, he's saying Erik Ten Hag. And then everybody who's been interviewed, whether it's from Steve McClaren, whether it's Ten Hag himself and Manchester United actually being impressed by him, Ten Hag's ticking all the right boxes. But still, it's that magnetic pull of, I told you, dusting not going into that old cabinet in Carrington, dusting off the 2016 Poch folder that's got Fergie's stamp on it, and the 2019 Poch folder that happened after he could have replaced Solskjaer. So, no, I keep saying that. Could have replaced Mourinho for Solskjaer. Poch has got a history of being a candidate at Manchester United. 2 times previously, it hasn't worked out. And now, it might not work out for a third time. It might not work out for a third time. But look, I appreciate you all joining in this morning. I'm glad that the internet held up here. As I said, about 2 weeks until I've got proper new internet in place. I've got a new computer yesterday that I'm going to be installing. I'm taking everything upwards. As I say, everything that you guys keep supporting the channel with, I keep saying I'm just putting it back into the channel to make it bigger and better. That's what I'm planning on doing. I apologize I won't be here for the next couple of days, but there will be a video on Ten Hag's keep or sell going out tomorrow. If anything big happens, I'll upload videos anyway. I probably won't be able to go live where I am, but I'm sure I can upload videos. But thank you all for joining in this morning on YouTube and on Facebook. If you would consider now, just drop a like on the video. It really does help. So many of you watch, so little of you decide to hit the like button. It'll only take 1 second, and it does help the channel grow. So thank you very much for joining in. I'll be back a little bit later today. I'm going to do a video. I'm not sure on what exactly yet, but I think I want to get something off my chest about Ralf Rangnick and basically saying, look, we deserve everything that comes to us if we ignore Ralf Rangnick on this. Feel quite strongly about it. But thank you all for joining in. Waffling now towards the end. And take it easy. I'll see you live next Tuesday. So a little bit of a break from the live streams, but there will be videos going out. So make sure you check out United People's TV. Take it easy, everyone.